What's your nightmare neighbor story? I had one trying to get rid of me because I knew he and the other neighbor smoked meth and were dealing too. The landlord was in on it and knew corrupt cops. The neighbor burned down the house cooking meth, the other did a stint in prison, the landlord died of cancer, and I'm proud to say, the cops were fired. Finn. Well, I mean, in college my neighbors were just a trap house lol. I also lived across the street from some relatives of Pam lol. They were almost as wacky as she was, just with less murder. They were renting the house from the previous owners who were going through a divorce and just trying to gain some passive revenue from the house so they could afford the split. We were pretty close with the previous owners. First thing that pissed us all off was they had literally 10 cars between them and their adult kids who visited a lot. Refused to park any of them in their own driveway garage. All on the street. Then they had this dog that I guess they didn't actually want. Left it outside all day and night, rain or shine, with no real shelter other than the underside of the deck. During one thunderstorm I straight up stole their dog lol. Banged on their door, no answer, so I hopped the fence, took the dog back to my house, and left a note letting them know. Came back and was like, oh THX, we were at church. And I was like, it's been raining since last night. You didn't think to let the dog in before you went to church? God is sure smiling down on you, I'm sure, treating one of his creatures like that. Then the final straw with them was they weren't paying the rent, so they got evicted. They stole all the hardware off the cabinets, left food rotting in the fridge, shut in all the toilets, and then had the water turned off. Just fucking trashed the place like children. But that wasn't the worst part. Our old neighbor, the owner of the house, had since moved states and was unable to do anything with the house for the time being but didn't want it to be truly abandoned, so he gave a key to my dad and asked if he wouldn't mind checking in on the place and just making sure it wasn't tanking everyone else's property values. Which we gladly obliged. One day the fire alarms were going off in the house. We never really stepped foot in it since the night maintenance left, but we wanted to make sure there wasn't an actual fire, so my dad and I went in to look around. No idea why the alarms were going off, no fire thankfully. The old tenants had these adopted toddlers. We found it was obviously their bedrooms and they had external locks installed on them, like they were just locking the kids in their bedrooms. Was creepy. If a fire broke out, those kids could have been trapped. I had a neighbor kick my door in with a baton after I was setting off fireworks in a manic episode the night before. His girlfriend called the cops and said I shot at them, whether or not he believed that I don't know. He cracked me across the jaw twice with the baton as I got up off my couch before turning to flee. I called the cops and they came and arrested me instead of him. Still facing pending charges, he never was arrested. I had to negotiate peace by throwing a barbecue one summer when two men on my street started fighting. One neighbor had yelled at an old man for having a generator that made an ungodly racket when the power was out after a hurricane. We all got annoyed by it too, but he didn't do anything illegal. The old man retaliated against the one dude who simply said what everyone was thinking by calling the city once. The electric returned and began a One Florida Man campaign of reporting him to code enforcement as often as humanly possible. I spit my coffee laughing one day going outside to see the sunrise, and there was the old man with his face on the ground holding a tape measure and a cell phone checking my neighbor's grass to see if it was up to code and taking photos as receipts to get another violation filed with the city. They hated each other. The thing that sucked was he would ticket anyone else on the street while he was there for petty shit, so we sat them down over burgers and booze while my husband played poker with them until they got drunk enough to drop their differences. This is largely related to what I created my Reddit account for. We live in a block of flats that has a small entranceway and then a central courtyard. The flats apartments then go up 2 levels and essentially enclose the courtyard. About 3 years ago, a family from our country moved down and took on one of the flats. Mum and Dad, 2 adult sons, 2 younger sons. Very shortly after, another family, his sister and her Romanian husband and their kids, moved into another. Shortly after, his brother and family took on another, then another 2 families related to the dad of the first family. Cousins, I think. The entire lot of them are scum. Crime went through the roof since the moment they got here. Theft went crazy, anything left in gardens, bikes, tools, etc. Van and shed break-ins, house break-ins. They are all known to be dealing drugs, etc. All sorts of nasty. They bullied the landlord allegedly to let the additional families take flats. They intimidate anyone who gets in their way, complete bullies. The youngest kids in the family are being raised to be criminals. When the police have managed to trace something to them, one of the young kids will own up to having stolen it. 9 to 10-year-olds, and the police don't seem to be able to do much other than a slap on the wrist. As far as most of their theft goes, they always seem to be ahead of the police enough that nothing can be pinned on them. Everyone knows they're responsible, but legally proving it has been impossible. Fortunately, they got a little bit of karma recently and several of them got badly injured. It is now looking like at least one of the families are moving out, so pretty much everyone else in block is now hoping the rest will follow.
Please like and subscribe for new content.